Hi, I'm Brent Morrison from Lush Cannabis Company, and you're listening to the S.M.E Stories podcast.
You are now listening to the next great small business podcast. Welcome to the S.M.E Stories podcast, where it is all about small businesses in Canada. And here's your host, Ken Alfred.
Hey everybody, thanks for downloading the show. We got a great episode today with Brent Morrison. Now, Brent Morrison is the owner and founder of Lush Cannabis Co. Lush Cannabis Co. is a biologically minded Canadian organic cannabis company. Now, a little bit about Brent. Originally from Cobourg, Ontario, he currently lives in Peterborough. He graduated from Western University with a BA in History and Philosophy and a Bachelor of Education. He later graduated from Trent University with honors in Bachelor of Science, specifically talking about cognitive psychology. In between those degrees, he decided to also spend time teaching in South Korea and then return to write course books for Oxford seminars before he decided to go back to school. Now, the goal was to actually pursue a PhD at UBC and graduate from Trent, but he decided to change his mind and decided to go to physiotherapy. Now, he didn't get in on his first application, so he decided to take a year off to travel throughout Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and Europe before returning home and reapplying. Then, while on the waiting list for Queen's University, he was offered an opportunity to help open a Medicine Wheel Natural Healing, the second Indigenous cannabis dispensary in Canada, a year before cannabis was legalized. This was the beginning for his journey in the cannabis field, and later he turned down his acceptance to Queen's University to pursue work in the cannabis industry. Now, he left the medicinal wheel back in 2020 and began working on opening up his own shop, which we did back in 2022, and a second store opening up in February 2023. So this is going to be a very interesting show today, guys. We're going to be going into the cannabis space, which I don't think we've done before, and I'm looking forward to hearing some of the stories that Brent has. So sit back and absorb. All right, here we go.
Nice.
All right, guys, we have Brent Morrison from Lush Cannabis Co.
Oh,
Brent, how you doing?
hello there.
Doing
How's
all
it going?
right.
Good, man. How
I
are
am
you?
doing good. It's
Excellent.
actually, the weather is still cold, but the snow is slowly melting here in Ontario. But
It
it
gives us
gives us
hope.
hope. Yes, I mean, I'm good with the snowblower being done for the season. I'm okay waiting till December to use it. But
I'd be happy with a snowfall span from like a week before Christmas to a week after New Year's, and
that's
then we
what
can go
I
back to
keep
spring.
saying in my podcast. I bet one of my listeners are going to call it out because I mentioned that over several episodes before. I said that's kind of like where I want it. Although I don't know about a week, I might say December the 23rd, and then melt everything by Boxing Day. And then you get the white crisp,
I'm
and
fine
then
with
you
that.
get to use your snowblower at least once or twice, and then you're good to go. But no,
Yeah.
that's great. So, all right, so Lush Cannabis
Yep.
Co. What's your story?
Yes, sir. Oh boy. All right. So yeah, Lush Cannabis. We now have two stores. We opened our first store in February of 2022 in Cavan, Ontario, which is just outside of Peterborough. It's just off Highway 115, about 15 minutes from downtown Peterborough. Um, and then yeah, we opened our second location almost exactly a year later. It was on February 24th of 2023, and that one is in the downtown area of Peterborough. Yeah, the business. I don't know how much do you want. How much do you
As
want me to get
much as
into?
you're comfortable talking about, Brent.
Sure, I guess I can just take you on the journey of how we got where we are. So the business came up. There's a few partners involved in it, and all of us have some experience working in the cannabis industry in various capacities, and just had a mutual interest in doing something together to work on this. So started scouting locations back late 2021, or actually probably mid 2021. Started scouting different locations. I had found something in the town of Millbrook, which is near Cavan, just outside of Peterborough. It's a small corner store location kind of thing, and it was like, oh, that could work. I could just work there on my own kind of thing, like a small shop. Um, and I called the realtor, and he expressed to me that, like, well, you want to know what we were going to do. I said cannabis. He's like, no, no, hold on, let me call you back. I was like, all right. So he did, and he's like, yeah, you don't want to be in the downtown. He's like, just drive up County Road 10. And I get there, and there's this massive like art gallery. I was like, oh yeah, no, we can't be with another business. It has to be separate. He's like, no, the gallery's moving out. You can take the whole building, and it's like 2,600
Wow.
square feet. It's massive. So I was like, well, yeah, it's we really want to connect, like, cannabis is a plant, and I'm very much a nature enthusiast. So we wanted to really like organic, natural vibe to the store. This place already had like a lot of cut beams and things like that. It was really well done as an art gallery, so it just fit perfectly style wise. And being like in a standalone building, we have space. We've run like different events outside. We've had live music. Just being able to have the room to do that really allowed us to do a lot of cool things that a lot of other cannabis stores are unable to do. So with that and its location on a pretty major cottage route, super busy intersection, a gas station and LCBO across the road. So like one stop shop if you're on your way to the cottage, get gas, get booze, get weed, and away you go. Yeah, and it's just kind of it's
So,
worked
so
out great.
explain. Can you backtrack for a second? Of you said you didn't want to share the
Yeah.
building. Was there any particular reason why, or was it just you wanted your really
Oh,
own, your fully owned space with all that stuff?
I just misunderstood him. I thought the art gallery was staying and that we would have like space in the
Oh,
gallery to
okay.
sell it. And I was like, well, the AGCO wouldn't allow that. But yeah, we could have had, and I've still thought like there is an upstairs to the building. Right now is just an office and sort of a workspace. Eventually, my plan is to open a mushroom themed
Hmm.
cafe. Not necessarily psilocybin mushrooms; they're not legalized yet. But there's like lion's mane and turkey tail and reishi and all these great medicinal mushrooms. And there's a growing interest in mushrooms as a whole field. So I would like to one day open a cafe with that, with the idea of if psilocybin ever becomes legalized, then we can maybe incorporate that. So you've got your cannabis and
So,
your mushrooms.
so explain
But
to the listeners as
mhm,
well. So you said you want to start a thing with mushrooms, especially. Do we know how far away we
mhm.
are to get it legalized? Like, because I know it took a while to get cannabis legalized here, at least here in Canada and Ontario, which is where we're from right now.
It did take some time, and a lot of that is, the regulatory apparatus moves slowly, and they're also very cautious. The with cannabis, there's a lot of concerns whether founded or not. I mean, we've all endured like 100 years of propaganda about how the devil's lettuce will ruin your life, but that's not necessarily true. But when they legalized cannabis, they want to be very careful with access, kids getting access to it, the safety, how potent will it be, and all that sort of thing. Those concerns are like an order of magnitude higher when it comes to things like
Oh,
mushrooms. The the idea like a kid might get into some edibles and they might eat 10 or a couple 100 milligrams of THC. Okay, well they're going to get sleepy and not maybe not feel quite right for a little while, but they'll be fine. Um, I don't have any kids, but I don't think I would feel very comfortable if my kid got into like a couple grams of mushrooms. That's a whole different life-changing experience. I don't think it should be illegal for adults to partake in that, but setting the industry up in a way that allows adults to freely partake in something like psilocybin mushrooms or other psychedelic mushrooms is it's important to have those safeguards in place, and I think that's what will take a lot of time. Right now, they've legalized it. Some therapeutic uses are starting to see some opportunity. They've legalized it for like end of life scenarios, which to me that's silly. Like if you're on your deathbed, you should be able to do whatever you want. I don't think there should be anybody telling you like, no, it's too dangerous for you to have
could it
this
get
drug,
any worse? Right,
even
they're
though
on
you're
their
gonna die.
deathbed already.
Yeah, yeah. So my guess is over the next 5 years, we'll see some significant moves in that direction. How it all looks, how it shakes out, I don't know. But you're already seeing like stores kind of like they did with cannabis, just taking that stand. Downtown Toronto has a couple like stores that sell mushrooms openly, and just like the old cannabis shops, they'll be shut down, they'll reopen, they'll be shut down, they'll reopen, and that's kind of it's those people that took that legal stand and put themselves and their livelihoods at risk that drove things forward. So yeah,
Like,
we're
how
we're moving
expensive is
there.
it to actually like to continuously close down and open up for those who are doing that? Like, isn't that like I think to the average person who's maybe wanting to think about starting their own business, whether it's in cannabis, mushrooms, or even anything, right? The idea of starting up,
hmm
they're going to have to probably shell out a lot of money just to get something, whether it's, finding a brick and mortar location or starting something. So, isn't that expensive for these guys to
hmm
start and stop? Okay.
Very much so. Like when I think of all the raids and stuff that have happened in Hamilton and Toronto and that pre-legalization and post-legalization, where they'll come, there might not end up being any charges, but they'll like confiscate all the stock and cash on hand, and then or there might be charges pending, and the people just go ahead and reopen. And I think to myself like we're legal, so that's not a risk. But if somebody came and took everything from the store, I don't know if I can reopen anytime soon. Like that's a major hit. So I don't know how they do it. I do suspect the ones that are operating outside of the regulatory sphere, their profit margins are obviously considerably higher,
That they
so they probably
can.
have some
Yeah.
cash banked. Yeah, they have the capital behind them to do that. But I can't imagine if that happens a couple of times in a row, it's got to
Yeah,
be crippling.
exactly. So, anyways, back to Lush Cannabis. So what got
Mhm.
you into the whole cannabis space altogether? Because I think I remember in the intro you sent me here, you started off. This wasn't the
Mhm.
original plan. Explain to the listeners what the original plan was.
My original plan has shifted many times. So I originally from Coburg, Ontario, and I graduated high school. I went my guidance counselors. I was actually looking into maybe being an electrician, and my guidance counselors were like, no, no, you should be a teacher. There's lots of jobs coming for teachers. So I was like, all right, I like that. So I went to Western. I got studied history and philosophy, and then applied to teachers college. And then yeah, I graduated from there, and then I decided to take some time and go teach abroad. So I went to South Korea, taught English for what was going to be a 6 month plan, turned out to be 2.5 years over 3 years because I just had a great time. And then I came back, and all those teaching jobs that my guidance counselors in high school said they were going to be everywhere, there were none.
None.
None. So I got a job working in Kingston, Ontario, for a company called Oxford Seminars. We do test preparation. So we train teachers to teach English abroad, as well as test prep for things like the LSAT, the MCAT, the GRE, some of the graduate school programs that you have to write an entrance exam. Um, so just writing course books and things like that. So I was doing that, and through my research for a book on teaching English to children, I delved into some of the neuropsychology of how language is learned and processed, and that re-sparked my interest in psychology. So I applied to Trent University to go back to study psych with the intention of perhaps pursuing like research or something like that in that. And then as life goes, that idea sort of changed. I talked to some professors about their job. I find the field fascinating, but a lot of profs commented to me that that's a job that you go where the work is. You don't necessarily have a say in where you're going to live or how it's going to work because professorships are so
Oh,
rare, and people tend to have them late into life. There's not a lot of turnover, so I was like, oh, that's like one of the profs I talked to, for example. He and his wife both graduated from the University of California, San Francisco, and she got a job in Wisconsin, and he got a job in Peterborough, Ontario, and they're just trying to make their life work. And I'm like, that doesn't
wow.
sound like what I
No,
want.
I bet you most people don't even know
So
that. Like when you, for those who are thinking of becoming a professor, they're just thinking, "Oh, okay, there's a job opening. You're just going to go." But who's to say? You got to
mhm,
go where the job is. And
if that's
yeah,
what you want to do, yeah, yeah. So then just rethinking what I would like to do, I got involved in a physiotherapy study at Queens. I had an ankle injury, and just pure luck, while I was in the emergency room, someone overheard me say it was for an ankle. He's like, I'm from the Queens School of Physical Therapy, and we're doing a study on ankle rehabilitation. Would you like to be a part of it? So I got a bunch of free physiotherapy. It actually worked really well. And that got me thinking, like, man, I like helping people heal. I'm interested in the body and all that. So I looked into physical therapy. And then as life goes, I applied. I didn't get in the first time, so I took a year off to go travel. So that's something I love to do. And then I reapplied, and while I was waiting for that, now we get to cannabis. I got offered an opportunity to help start Medicine Wheel Natural Healing, which is an Indigenous dispensary in Alderville First Nation. I'm not Indigenous, but a friend of mine that I've known since high school was opening it, and he asked me if I'd be interested in helping him open this, and I was like, it's a risk because this was pre legalization and I'm not native. So I was like, yeah, I, I support it, but sure,
can you
whatever.
pay me
We'll roll the
cash at
dice.
least? So just to make
Um,
sure.
yeah, just keep this quiet. Um, yeah. So, I started that, and it was a very, um, medicinally focused shop. So we'd had an intake protocol that we developed where we'd ask people like the reasons that they're seeking cannabis so we could help them find the right products. And just the feedback we got from people on how much having access to cannabis and the various products that can be made from the plant has drastically, excuse me, improved their lives. Um, Health function, all of that. That when I was on a waiting list for Queen's Physical Therapy, and when they reached out that I had a position, I was like, you know what, I'm already working in a field where I'm helping people feel better and improve their lives. Why would I stop this, step away, go further into debt? For 2 years in the program, and then try to restart where I am now. It's like I might as well just stick with this. It seems to be doing well, and yeah. That's how I
Wow.
got into it.
And it's interesting how you talked about that too, right? So it's a very interesting journey that you know, it's almost like a weird path of how you're going to get to where you're going to go, right? It's as much as parents would
Mhm.
want their kids to have a very straight, you know, area to do it. Sometimes they got to go through a little bit of a zigzag to get to where they need to go. And you know,
100%. Yeah. I think about that a lot actually. Like I think, had I just finished high school and then really pushed for teaching and done that, I'd be well set in a good career with a good pension and have my summers off, like lots of benefits. But all the life experience and all the things I've done, the people I've met and all that stuff would be totally different. I'm not saying better or worse, but um, given that I like where I'm at and I like the how my life is right now, I wouldn't trade any of the different deviations and paths that I took
yeah,
to
no,
get here.
I can totally echo that statement too. Because I mean, I used to work in the corporate sector before, and I really enjoyed, you
Mhm.
know, kinesiology, exercise, nutrition. And there was a time in my life
Okay.
where I said, you know what, you know, the corporate sector is burning me out. You know, I'm like, okay, let me just go into
Mhm.
fitness. And my now wife, Mrs. K, who's also a physiotherapist, by the way. Uh, but the
Oh,
funny thing
nice.
is
Yeah.
like, she's like, you know what, you should go for it. I said, why? Well, look, at that time we were just renting a cottage, or sorry, a condo. We don't have kids. We don't have a
Mhm.
house. Let's do it. And if you really succeed at it, great. You're doing what you love. Or two, if
Mhm.
you don't really like it, at least you can always go back to the corporate side because you have, because I had the degree and all that sort of stuff at university. So I had flexibility in that way. And you know what it taught me? Even though
Mhm.
those personal training years, I worked in various gyms, I met so many people, had so much fun doing it, you know, that I wouldn't trade in anything for those years of doing it.
Yeah.
And you know what also solidified it too, Brent, is that I knew
Mhm.
then my wife, Mrs. K, did not marry me for the money because I did not have make any money, and it must have been it must have been love. That's the only way I can see it. You
Got-
know,
it's good to have that test so you know for
exactly,
sure.
exactly. So
Yeah.
back to Lush. So tell the listeners, what do you guys produce and sell?
So, yeah, Lush Cannabis. We don't produce any cannabis products ourselves, although actually we just launched our own brand of flower. So if I could just a little bit on how the regulations work, the government has tried very hard to separate cultivation or production and retail. So there's limits in if you have a cultivation facility, there's limits in the percentage of ownership you can have in a retail store, and vice versa. They just it was an attempt to not have like single stream, like these guys make it, they sell it, and there's no room for anybody to get into the industry. That was their intent. So we wouldn't be able to have a cultivation or a production license and make our own flower. However, we can contract with other producers to grow flower for us, and you can be as involved in that as your knowledge allows you. One of the people we work with is very knowledgeable as a cultivator. So he's worked with the facility to kind of get the specific strain that we would like, and then eventually some more. Yeah, we just launched that last week, and we sold out by the weekend. So we got more coming,
Congratulations.
so that's a good sign. Yeah, yeah, thank you. And it's good because like we do have a background in. We've all been involved in cannabis, like I said, for a long time, and we have a love and appreciation for the plant. So having good quality products that we can put our name on is it feels good. Um, yeah. And then aside from that, then the retail store itself, we carry all the range of products from topicals, edibles, vapes, concentrates like shatter and hash and oil, flour, dried flour, pre-rolls, a clothing line.
You got the hat though. Yeah.
We got the hat, yeah. Yeah, so we got that. We have some angle of things that we like, the I don't know, full spectrum branding, I guess you could call it. We want when it came to the clothing, like we all wanted stuff that we want to wear. Like some shops just like get a screen. No, like we got nicely embroidered things. They have a little stash pocket where you can put a joint or a lighter to that to kind of expand out the range of things that we can offer to the customer. And on clothing are higher than they are on cannabis.
Good to
So
know. Good to know. So talk to some of the listeners.
yeah,
Like I said, so myself and Mrs. K, we've never tried any cannabis of any kind. So, what is your typical
okay.
client? Because I think some people, when they think cannabis, are like, oh, we're going to get only a bunch of hippies coming in and blah, blah, blah. But I don't think that's the case. I think it's just anybody who wants it. Again, it's like almost like if you can compare it to like alcohol, there's not your stereotypical person who goes to the beer store, the LCBO. It's like anybody.
No,
It's the same thing
it's
with
it's
cannabis, right?
it's anybody. Yeah, very much so. It's funny. Like June of 2017, that was it. Like trying to think of like what will our clientele look like? Stoners in their 20s coming in, and immediately middle age and higher, like in their 50s. Either they had like smoked for a long time and they were just happy cannabis can help with this or that, and we just got the full range, and that's continued on now. I don't have really detailed demographic information, but just from like an eye test, our average age of the customers we have would be probably mid to late 40s. Um, and it goes down to people that just turned 19 all the way up to people in their 70s or 80s, but it's definitely not the what you might expect when you think of cannabis, like a bunch of long-haired hippies looking to get high.
Like those guys from that
Yeah.
70s show. That like Leo from
Yes,
that
exactly.
70s
Yeah.
show. The typical that's what some people I'm like, no, I think anyone can use it. And like you said, so the people who come to you, so you said some are looking just to smoke or maybe just to buy some, but some people go there for like health ailments. Because I think people need to get that stigma out that cannabis is only for just getting high. Right. It's actually that
Hmm.
can you can pursue that if you want, but there's some health benefits to it as well.
Absolutely, and I find it funny slash interesting. So at Medicine Wheel, we were very medicinally focused. Now, the way that the framework is from Health Canada, because there's still the medical stream in Canada where you can go to your doctor and get a license and buy from those producers. So we're explicitly recreational. Um, and I was like, okay, well, if somebody needs help with sleep, I'm still going to direct them to a product that'll do that. And I do find it funny that we're on paper under the regulations explicitly recreational, yet we sell like CBD cream that you would put on your hands. I don't think anyone's using CBD cream recreationally. So obviously there's a medical end to what we do. Now we're not prescribing things for, cancer treatments or whatever. Obviously that should go through the medical realm. But just with the products that are available on the market, there's things that can help with sleep, with anxiety, with pain, inflammation, skin problems, all kinds of things like that, that don't have to involve getting high. Like there's topicals and oils and edibles and things that a range of not new cannabinoids, but cannabinoids that are new to the market, are being explored that have these great effects that are non-psychoactive. Something like we've heard of CBD and THC and how they affect you. So THC is the part that gets you high. Um, if that's what you're looking for, then look for some THC in there. But it also, it's a pain reliever. It has some other benefits as well. CBD is great for reducing stress and anxiety. I find if I take CBD before bed, I have a really restful sleep. And then things like CBN is similar to CBD, but it's more sedative, so it's more likely to make you drowsy. So there's products that are just CBD and CBN, so you won't get high, but it'll help you fall asleep. And then on the other side, there's other things like CBG, which just a bit of plant how the plant develops here. So as the plant's growing, the first thing it produces is CBG, and that differentiates into CBD, THC, CBC, all of the different cannabinoids. And then at the end of that cycle, all of those things will degrade into CBN. So if you have really old weed that's just been sitting out for a long time, probably a lot of the other cannabinoids have changed into CBN, so it's going to make you more sleepy than if that weed was really fresh. Um, so harvesting the plant early and getting the CBG, it has like a mood boosting, uplifting effect. So yeah, there's all these different things that we're seeing more and more of. We're seeing them in different combinations that produce different effects that people may seek, and I think we're only scratching the beginning of where
Wow, it's
this could
pretty good
go.
to know. And so you said you have two locations right now. How big is your current workforce right now?
Currently, we employ. I'd have to count here. So
He's literally counting with his fingers, folks. So you can tell it's a lot of people.
yeah, we have 12 people right now, which is pretty good. When we opened, it was yeah, myself and two others, and we just worked there between the three of us. There was two of us there at all times for the first month and a half. Didn't pay ourselves. So we didn't have the money coming in, so we just labor of love there, and then we were able to hire a couple of people, and it's just kind of grown from there to the point where yeah, now we of those 12 people, 8 are full time. So um, we look at that as like these are people that are like choosing to dedicate themselves and a significant portion of their lives to helping us in our business. And in exchange, like we have some, um, we owe them for that. So it's a very reciprocal relationship that we have with the people that work with us. We definitely see it as a team kind of environment, and like we have to make sure that we're paying you fairly so that you can put food on the table. You might have
Mhm.
kids, might have whatever. So yeah, we really strive to. I've worked in retail as a part-time job since high school, and it's a terrible industry to work in. You get abused by customers. It's very draining, and you're paid minimum wage. Basically, that's it. You're just disposable things, and opening a retail store. The only way that I would be interested in doing that is to not have it be that way.
Make it
Treat people right.
different than what the standard model is too. Because I remember I used to work at Old Navy back
Exactly.
when I was younger too, my early 20s, and I was just asking for a raise, and I didn't know any better. It was like early
Hmm.
20s, so like I think I was getting paid $8.10 an hour, and they're saying, "Ken,
Yeah.
here, well, thank you for your performance. We'll bump you to 8.20."
It's
All
like,
right,
thanks. That's
four
four
bucks a
bucks a
week. I
week.
was like, sure, right? You don't know these things until you really start experiencing the grind. Sometimes I always tell people, like, I think almost everybody in the world, when they're growing up, they should either one have to work in a retail store or some type of customer
Hmm.
service help center, even for just
100%.
3 months.
I
And
think,
then
yeah, that should be a rite of passage. You should work in retail, work in a
restaurant
restaurant,
too.
work somewhere where you're interacting with the public, and that will teach you what people are like, and it should help you be a better customer for
Yeah,
those
and even
establishments
when
and,
you
and
run your
treat
own
people better.
business or anything, you know how to treat people better,
Hmm.
right? Just because I think people forget a simple please and thank you goes a long way. You know that.
Totally. Yeah. Just
Yeah,
respect, like general respect, like yeah. Yeah, I've worked for people, and I've seen people that like they have a very hierarchical top down kind of view, like, well, I employ you, so you're going to do what I say, or I'm not going to employ you. And like, okay, but that's also a human being that is a full person, that you can maybe interact with them on that level instead of just
yeah.
this very
Finding that
stratified
balance, right?
way of looking at
Between,
things.
you're still the
Yeah,
boss, but also at the same time, you can still joke with them and hang out with them and help invite them over to the house for a barbecue or something if you still want to, if you're that close, right? You want to
totally.
have that type of relationship where it's
And
friendly.
exactly, and yeah, and yeah, to have that engagement and like listen to their ideas. Like, I know things and I have ideas of how things should work, but like I've also got staff that work there all day long, and if they have an idea, I'm going to listen to it because they're the ones there all the time. And you're missing out on so much by not collaborating with the people that are invested in your business
Absolutely,
with you.
absolutely. So next question here. So where do you guys see yourself in the next few years? Is the goal to open more locations? Is it doing anything else?
Yeah, both. So yeah, the goal is to open some more locations. Like we've just opened our second one, and we learned a lot through opening the first one. That opening the second one was a little more seamless. Like for the first one, we had hired consultants to help us with the licensing process, and that was very it was necessary. There's no way we could have done it without them. Um, and then for the licensing, sorry to deviate for a bit. So there's three things that you need to open a cannabis store. You need a retail operations license, which is a really in-depth security and background check on whoever the stakeholders are. And that basically gives you a license that says you can open a store or have stores. Then you apply for a retail store authorization, which is for a specific location. That's when they check the security of the building, your cameras, the layout, how it's all going to operate. And then you need a retail manager's license, which is just like now you can run the store. That one I think is just a cash grab. It's kind of ridiculous, but we very much needed consultants for the operations license. But having gone through like the store authorization, this time we didn't need save us the 10 grand in consulting fees, and we just did it, and we knew kind of how that goes. So this one, first one was difficult. Next one was difficult but a little easier, and then it should get a little bit easier from there. It's hard though because the industry is so saturated. There are so many. Like we're in Peterborough, and the Peterborough Examiner did an article on the new store. They did one when we opened in Millbrook, and then called to follow up and did an article on that. And I didn't even know until I read the article. We were the 17th store to open in Peterborough, which is a city of like less than 100,000 people. So it's really saturated. So our plan to open more stores, we're really going to have to be very selective in the geographic regions that we approach, because it just doesn't make sense to get into like a whirlpool of people racing to the bottom. It's
Yeah, and I
stressful.
think we're going to definitely touch on the tips from the pro segment here, but especially for those who want to get into your space as well in the future, right? So,
Hey you, do you need a voiceover? Well, look no farther. Northway Capital Group has your answer. Commercials and explainer videos, AVR and voicemail, health and wellness, corporate training and e-learning, announcements, documentaries, and biography. Contact us on social media or email us at northwaycapitalgroup@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to the S.M.E Stories podcast, which is owned by Northway Capital Group. Please follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Northway Capital Group.